In at number 10, Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon decided enough was enough when images of Jimmy Fallon wearing blackface began to resurface. The main photo going around showed Jimmy dressed as comedian Chris Rock for what was an old Saturday Night Live sketch. Jimmy has since apologized, but not everyone was ready to accept that apology. Nick Cannon then posted a collage of Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and Sarah Silverman all in blackface as he wished everyone a happy Blackface History Month. He then went on to tag all of them in another post as he begged the question, "Are these your kings of late night?" Oh, and by tag them in a post, I mean he literally tagged their Instagram handles to further that conversation. In a final message about Jimmy Fallon, Nick Cannon had this to say, "You know, I'm always on the side of the comedian and never pander to the sensitive, but I feel there needs to be some truth and reconciliation discussions and teachable moments amongst our communities." But before we get into our next point though, make sure to smash that like button because it really helps us out here on the channel. In at number 9, Tracy Morgan. Back in 2007, Vulture magazine did a full story called "Tracy Morgan Hates Jimmy Fallon Just as Much as You Do." And in that article, they have quoted Tracy Morgan as he discussed what it was like to work with Fallon on Saturday Night Live. In the quote, Tracy said, "Laughing and all that dumb shit he used to do, he wouldn't mess with me because I didn't fucking play that shit. That's taking all the attention off of everybody else and putting it on you. Like, oh, look at me, I'm the cute one. I told him not to do that in my sketches, so he never did." Some people may have viewed Jimmy's laughter as a sign of nervousness, or perhaps he thought the sketch was just so funny that he couldn't keep a straight face. However, with this direct quote from someone who worked alongside him, it's become clear that the laughter is more for attention than anything else. I mean, we can't fault him for wanting more attention on a show that is widely known to be super competitive within their own ranks. The stories about Saturday Night Live cast members backstabbing each other to get their sketches on air is endless. And it turns out Tracy Morgan wasn't about to have Jimmy steal any of his spotlight. In at number 8, Shawn Mendes. So far, singer Shawn Mendes has had 2 appearances on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and we're not sure why. Nothing against Shawn, but that first appearance was very awkward. Shawn first appeared on the show back in 2016 and came on to help Jimmy with singing songs on the spot. Unfortunately for Shawn, Jimmy gave him a late cue to start singing, which made Mendes look extremely unprofessional and completely out of his element. Even though that wasn't the reality, it certainly came off that way. In at number 7, Banks. How excited would you be if you were a musician and then suddenly you heard your song being played on a late night talk show? Sounds like a dream come true, right? Well, for the South Sudanese born rapper named Banks, it was his biggest nightmare. Banks became well known, especially in Australia, for his viral hits such as "Take You to the Movies" and "Meet Me on Facebook." However, it was his song "Take You to the Movies" that received a rather unflattering review from one Jimmy Fallon. In a segment called "Do Not Play," Fallon ridiculed Banks for the song and even mocked his performance by mimicking him. In response to this, Jimmy made a new enemy in Australia, and Banks put out a Jimmy Fallon diss track called "Do Not Watch." In at number 6, Don Rickles. Comedian Don Rickles was an absolute legend, famous for being able to humiliate an entire room of people just by himself. Doesn't sound that impressive, but writing good roast jokes can be very difficult, and this man was able to think of them on the spot and deliver it with ease. This moment he has with Jimmy Fallon can be very telling though, as Don Rickles showers Jimmy with compliments before arriving at the conclusion that he has never liked the late night host. Rickles has been appearing on The Tonight Show since Fallon was in diapers, so the moment that he was on the show, he took complete control and warned us that Fallon carrying on the show may have been a bad idea. He said he was great at impressions, but then mocked the size of the audience, and this was pre-COVID. He also mentioned that Jimmy should enjoy the show while he has it because it's probably not gonna last.
Number 5, Martin Short. Comedian legends Steve Martin and Martin Short aren't just longtime showbiz besties, but they are also absolutely hilarious together. Ever since they starred in the 1986 film Three Amigos. These two have been known for their fabulous banter. However, when they appeared together on The Tonight Show in 2019, they used the opportunity to rip into the host Jimmy Fallon, turning the interview in somewhat more of a Comedy Central roast than a casual late night appearance with rapid fire jokes aimed at the talk show host. Alleged fakeness. With Martin beginning the show by saying this is the greatest show on television because there is no host in the late night that pretends to care the way you do. I mean, no one captures phoniness the way you do, it's a gift. He would then take things a little too far when he went on to say that it was really rare that Jimmy's teeth looked so good even though he was taking narcotics. Short then went on to declare, "You prove that all handsome white men can make it in show business." Near the end of the roast, Jimmy just looked more noticeably quieter than he usually does, as he was trying to recover from all the hurtful things that were said so he can move along with the interview. Number 4, Louis C.K. Just once before 5 women accused him of making unwanted advancements was exposed by the New York Times in November of 2017. Comedian Louis C.K. Gervais was making his rounds on the talk show circuit to promote his Netflix stand-up special. He and Jimmy Fallon seemingly got along just fine at the top of his appearance on The Tonight Show that March. Well, that is until the host appeared to forget how to use his brain when Lewis began the interview by telling Jimmy how much he loves to take naps midway through his rave about activity. Jimmy would ask him, "You like it better than sleep?" which it all took to leave Lewis looking utterly perplexed. And then he went on to grace us all with the most epic side-eye before joking, "You really? That's stupid. You just said that. That was a dumb thing to say." That was such a dumb thing to say. The comedian then went on to rip into Jimmy further when he offered multiple analogies showcasing just why he felt like the question was so absurd. For his part, the former SNL star tried to save the entire situation through his rationality before Lewis finally dropped the banter with a chuckle, asking him if he could just get past this part. Number 3. Ricky Gervais. Notorious for his style of self-deprecating cringe humor, Ricky Gervais admittedly has no filter. In a 2019 interview with the New York Times Magazine, the comedian explained that the notion of himself taking things a little too far is one of the things he does for comedy, laughing at the wrong thing because you know what's right, with its self-professed view of what's right and wrong, if that makes sense of what he said. Particularly through the lens of comedy, it should come to no surprise that the British entertainer immediately latched on to Fallon's fake compliments during his 2017 appearance on the Late Night Show. After the host began telling Ricky that he looked great, which was enough to send his guests into a long-winded rant about his appearance when he said, "I look great, is that sarcasm? You see, this is the thing with you. The talk show. Oh, you look great. Even though, look at me, of course I don't look great." The creator of the British version of The Office then hushed his hilarious 4.5-minute charade about weight gain with a string of profanity, causing Fallon to look away from the camera and playfully cut his gut off so he could attempt to continue on with the interview. Number 2. Blake Shelton. It's hard to imagine annoying Blake Shelton as he's a laid-back country singer. However, when he nearly lost his cool when he appeared on The Tonight Show in 2017, he kinda lost respect from a lot of his fans, with Jimmy kicking things off by heckling Blake over his cover for his 11th studio album, Texoma Shore. With what began as a light-hearted humor conversation, it would turn Blake to have a furious moment. With Jimmy asking Blake what he was thinking and about the memories he was in, Blake would turn sour and he would try to keep things friendly, as the audience laughed as he would tell Jimmy he was wishing he was actually there instead of on his show. With the comedian not noticing the slight hint that Blake was trying to urge the comedian to move on, Jimmy began to bring up Blake's upbringing by imitating Southern accents and stereotypes. The voice judge looked semi-annoyed as the so-called joke went on and he refused to laugh at Fallon's sketch. However, after a couple more minutes of banter, Blake appeared to have enough and finally snapped at Fallon by saying, "Will you interview me for God's sake?" When Jimmy went on to finally interview the country singer, he would then seemingly mutter, "Thank God." It just seems like Blake isn't the type of person who has a good sense of humor, and Jimmy should have known better than to bring him on the show since he is the king of humor. Number 1. John Oliver. While he's famously engaging and animated with his guests, Jimmy Fallon appeared to tone things down a bit when he sat down for an interview with late-night rival John Oliver in 2018. When Jimmy asked John about his role as Zazu in the live-action remake of The Lion King, Oliver would say, "I'm a movie star. You respect me, Jimmy. I'm a movie star now, and some things are about to change around here." The British comedian then went on to discuss his experience singing the Disney classic, "I Just Can't Wait to Be King." Oliver then went on to brush off the production's note that he sang great and would become an ironic remark, especially considering Fallon's next move. When Jimmy turned his attention to Oliver's small role in his award-winning HBO show, Jimmy would start things off by saying, "The best title of any show ever." Without skipping a beat, John then responded by giving him a blank expression, saying, "The best title, wow, that sounds like fanning me with fake praise. Jimmy, I really love the title, it goes downhill once it's finished." But it seems like even if the two were not taking things seriously, that John was just a little too full of himself. Starting off our list today in the number 10 spot, we have The Entanglement. Jada pretty much devoted a 2020 episode to her relationship with her husband Will Smith during an episode of her controversial Facebook watch series, The Red Table Talk Show. When the couple sat down to discuss R&B singer August Alsina Scheana's claim that he got Will's blessing to have a relationship with Jada. On the show, Jada would admit that she did start a relationship with August during a brief separation from Will around 4 years prior. Will would then come out to say, "I was done with you. We decided that we were going to go separate ways for a period of time, and you would figure out how to make yourself happy, and I'll figure out how to make myself happy. I really wished we could be over." Jada then went on to elaborate on what she was doing within the brief break when she said, "I got into a different kind of entanglement with August. It was a relationship, absolutely. I was in a lot of pain and I was very broken." Jada then went on to note that the process of her relationship helped her realize that she couldn't find happiness outside of herself, and she was lucky that her and Will realized that they just couldn't stay away from each other. Number 9. Discipline Trey. When it comes to discipline, we all know that Will and Jada have chosen to let their kids deal with their own consequences, and maybe this is because Jada once tried to discipline Will's first son Trey, which he shares with his ex-wife. Back in 2018, Jada would invite Will's ex-wife to join her on an episode of the Red Table Talk Show, and in the midst of the episode, they would talk about co-parenting Will's son Trey and how Jada had some regrets when it came to it. With the two ladies having a really tough relationship at the beginning of their blended family situation, Cherie Zampino would reveal that they once even had a heated conversation on the phone where they exchanged some fighting words, as she called to talk to her son, but first she had to speak to Jada. And in the process, Cherie revealed that she wasn't being really respectful, and she even told Jada she was living in the house that she picked, to the point Jada also said, "It's my house now." Jada would also open up about the time she tried to discipline Trey, to the point Will even had to step in and put the star into her place and tell her that it was his son, not hers. Hey my little peaches, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never have to miss on what we might just cover next. Coming in at number 8, we have The Root of the Matter. In the web series' 3rd episode, Jada would confess that the head wrap she was wearing with increasing frequency wasn't just a fashion statement, because in reality the star had been losing handfuls of hair, and with it she couldn't pinpoint the reason. Doctors then suspected that it could be because she was having a stress-related alopecia episode. Jada then went on to share the moment when she first realized her hair was falling out by saying, "It was one of those times in my life where I was literally shaking with fear, and that when I was like, oh my god, am I going bald?" She then put things in a spiritual perspective to get through it. The higher power takes so much from people, and by golly, if the higher power wants to take your hair, that's it. God, you want my hair? When I looked at it in that perspective, it really did settle. Number 7, Jordyn Woods. 2019 was definitely an intense year for Jordyn Woods when she got caught up in the Tristan Thompson cheating scandal and saw the first initial split between him and Khloe Kardashian. After the Kardashians went on to drag Jordyn's name by March 2019, Jordyn would be ready to share her side of the story. And she even took a lie detector test to prove her involvement in the dissolution of Khloe and Tristan's relationship wasn't all on her. In the interview, Jordyn would reveal that she never once danced with the star, she was never making out with him, and she didn't sit all over him, and he was actually just hanging out with her and a group of her friends. In the end, Jordyn would tell Jada that she just wanted everyone to be accountable for their own actions, and she didn't want anybody to feel the way she had been feeling. By December of 2019, her results of the lie detector test would come back and prove that she passed and she was 100% honest. When she was asked multiple questions about her involvement with Tristan Thompson in the scandal. Number 6, Olivia Jade. In December 2020, Olivia Jade would make her first appearance on the Red Table Talk Show following the college admissions scandal, in which her parents paid roughly $500,000 to secure Olivia and her sister admission at the University of Southern California. Jade, who is a YouTube influencer, noticeably went quiet during the Varsity Blues investigation that found both of her parents to be guilty in the process. She then decided, after Jada convinced her that the Red Table Talk was the right place for her to share her side of the story, as when she finally made it onto the show, she would say, "I'm here because I want to leave it on the Red Table Talk Show. I don't want to keep dragging this throughout my life." During the episode, Jada's mother was not impressed with Jade taking a seat, and she would say, "I just found it really ironic that she chose 3 black women to reach out for her redemption story. It's bothersome to me on so many levels. her being here is an epitome of white privilege.
At number 5, we have the Oscars jokes. Jimmy hosted the 2017 Oscars, and many people were not happy with the jokes he made. When actor Mahershala Ali won an Oscar for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Jimmy thought it would be a good idea to poke fun at his name. While the actor was probably internally celebrating his award, as well as his newborn daughter at the time, Jimmy said that with a name like his, he can't name his daughter just Amy. One Twitter user expressed their disgust for the joke, saying, "You received the greatest honor of your career, and immediately after a white man reminds you that you are different." The talk show host also had a prank segment where he tricked a bus full of tourists to attend the Oscars. He found another opportunity to make fun of ethnic names when he asked one Asian woman for her name, to which she said it was Yulri. Then when he asked for her husband's name, which was Patrick, Jimmy said, "See, that's a name." Another Twitter user made fun of Jimmy, saying, "Kimmel is so baffled by non-Anglo names like Mahershala and Yulri," which earned a handful of likes in agreement. At number 4, we have Tyler Perry, who exposed Jimmy. Sometime early last year, the filmmaker made a guest appearance on the talk show and had a moment similar to that one awkward interview exchange between Dakota Johnson and Ellen. Jimmy brought up the brand new studio Tyler had opened, which brought up a party invitation Jimmy had ignored. There was a big party celebrating the studio's opening, and Tyler invited Jimmy only for him not to show up. Jimmy tried to use the lockdown as an excuse, but this party was way before the world shut down. He then came up with another excuse, trying to appear humble, and said that he assumed the invitation was for Jimmy Fallon. But Tyler was quick to point out the invitation had said Jimmy Kimmel and included a whole video requesting his attendance. And to make things worse, Jimmy had actually acknowledged the invite and promised to send a gift at least, but there was no gift. While it was a conversation in mostly good faith, Jimmy wasn't making himself look any better. Next up, we have the interview with Roseanne Barr. She had appeared on the talk show to help promote the reboot of Roseanne, a hit family sitcom from the 80s. But the conversation took a turn and became all about politics, which was not what the audience was looking forward to. They discussed her habit of excessive tweeting that made no sense, her political views, and the time she ran for president in 2012. While the interview got laughter and applause, I wouldn't be surprised if most of it was because they kinda had to. Viewers were unhappy with the interview as they felt like the vibe was ruined. They were waiting to hear more about the Roseanne reboot and not about her reaction to Trump's presidential win. One user said, "Kimmel insisted on talking about politics when Carr was clearly trying to behave and promote her show. That was cringeworthy regardless of your political stance." The show in question ended up getting cancelled after one season following her xenophobic tweets. At number 2, we have the time he played back Joaquin Phoenix's outtake. So Jimmy and Joaquin were discussing the actor's infamous role as the Joker when Jimmy played an outtake for the audience. Things were very intense, as you can tell by Joaquin's demeanor. The actor was clearly irritated and fed up, if his swearing at the staff was anything to go by. He was seen cussing out at Larry, whom he revealed was one of the movie's cinematographers, for calling him Cher, implying that Joaquin was being a total diva on set. Once the clip finished, the actor was clearly caught off guard and embarrassed. He apologized to the audience for witnessing him in that moment, but the fans applauded him. Fans were not happy though that Jimmy had even unveiled this to the public to begin with, as they thought he was trying to get the public to view Joaquin differently. And finally, at number 1, we have the "I told my kids I ate all their Halloween candy" segment. Now, I'm sure you've seen at least one of these types of videos floating around the internet, and honestly, they're funny, you can't even lie. But some users don't think so, claiming that the video challenge, aimed for a good laugh, is at the cost of children's trauma, which I don't think it's that serious, especially because most of the videos, if not all, have the parent come clean and show that they didn't actually eat all of their Halloween candy. Even Jimmy tried to end things and skip the tradition altogether in 2020, but parents continued on anyways.
Starting off our list today at number 10, we have the ex-wife interview. Jada is known to invite just about everyone on her Red Table talk show. So it really shouldn't be a surprise when we found out that she invited Will Smith's ex-wife, Cherie. And during the interview, they would talk about a time that Jada actually thought it was okay to discipline Will's son Trey. With both ladies describing their sides of the story, Jada would start things off by saying, "I can remember some times that I really crossed the line. There was one time Trey had a play date and he misbehaved, and I was like, we gotta sit down, we gotta talk about this. Trey can't be behaving this way." And Cherie shared her version by adding, "I literally walked into the house, just dropped him off, and as I walked in, Jada was like, 'Listen, we gotta talk about his behavior,' and I was like, 'Go get his daddy, please. Why were you talking about what happens at my house over here? This behavior was at my house, but you can't really discipline someone else's kids and think it's okay." Number 9. Forced marriage interview. During an interview with People magazine, Jada would tell the media outlet that she never wanted to get married, and she ultimately only ended up getting married because her mother told her she had to get married. With Jada's mother being old and Will wanting a family, in the end Jada agreed to getting married as she was forced to believe that it was something she really should have done. Even though she admitted that she fell hard for Will when they first started dating in 1995, she would also admit that after she got pregnant with their son Jaden 2 years later, she wasn't necessarily down to have a traditional wedding. Later on in the interview, Jada would then say that the reason she was having so much doubt when it came to the idea to marriage, even though she adored Will, was because she never really seen a happy marriage and it made her not fond of the idea. And honestly, that's probably why she ended up cheating on Will in the first place. Hey my little peaches, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Coming at number 8, we have Willow's photo. When Jada sat down for an interview with high-end shopping site Net-a-Porter, she would have to come to her daughter's defense again after she was asked about the controversial photo of Willow being 13 years old laying in bed with the shirtless 20-year-old photographer. Jada would then go on to tell the interviewer, "Just don't pollute something that's not dirty. It's really tough. I feel like the connection to value of woman on a bigger scale has decreased tremendously. Even though you look and go, women have so many opportunities," and it's like, yeah, but at what cost? Are women valued for being women, or are they valued when they have more masculine qualities? She then went on to note that she just wants her kids to be happy and just wants them to be themselves, as her kids aren't her and she can't fix things that happen to her by projecting her thoughts onto her kids because it's a terrible trap, and that's why she stood by Willow's decision and made all of us cringe in the process. Number 7, Scientology. Okay, so we all know Jada's a little weird, and that's probably because over the last decade she's been trying to deny that she has any affiliation with the Church of Scientology. And then after she was exposed by an ex-Scientologist for not only being spotted at the Celebrity Center, but also for opening a school for the controversial religion for kids, Jada would then bring Lee on her Red Table Talk show, and she would clear the air by trying to settle their dispute back in 2018. And in the interview, it definitely had a lot of us raising our eyebrows because we just couldn't believe that Jada was lying through her teeth just to justify why she was going to the church in the first place. During the interview, Jada would say, "My grandmother was like, you're gonna learn all the religions, and then you gotta decide which one you want to practice. I always took the position that I'm here at the Scientology Center to learn what I want to learn, and I have no interest in being a Scientologist." And that statement would have been fine if it was the truth, but you can't open a Scientology school for kids and then say you have no intention of being a Scientologist when you're already affiliated with the religion. Number 6, parenting. With Jada and Will Smith being A-list celebrities at one point, it's no surprise that their children also grew up in the limelight. However, as any aspect of a celebrity, being a famous parent has sometimes led to increased scrutiny for Jada. Jada's and Will's parenting has often come under fire for years, which would then cause Jada to sit down with US Weekly to explain the Smiths are very open about a wide variety of subjects when she said, "I'm not a conventional parent," which I take a lot of pride in. And then in 2018, Jada would also admit that she and Will had different parenting approaches and often argued over the subjects like their son Jaden Smith wearing a skirt. She would then take to her Red Table Talk show to embarrass her husband by saying he has his feelings on that for sure. I remember Will calling me and being like, "Have you talked about this with Jaden and him wearing a skirt?" And I said, "Yes, I have. He's pretty happy about it." But honestly, the fact that she's gotten her kids to even turn on their father during interviews just proves that she isn't exactly the role model parent everybody should be following.
In at number 5, Robert Downey Jr. Back in January, Mexican filmmaker Alejandro Gonzalez stated he was aware Robert would not be apologizing for a formerly offensive comment made about him. 7 years following Robert's initial remark about Alejandro's English vocabulary as a native Spanish speaker, the cinematic creator informed The Independent that he wasn't holding his breath breath for Robert to step forward with remorse or any apologies, saying, "Of course not. I honestly could not care at all. I'm completely against what he said, but I will defend his right to say whatever he wants. Anything he wants to say is fine, but for me it reads completely the wrong way." Robert's comment took place back in 2015 after Alejandro expressed his negative feelings about Marvel movies to a reporter. In response, Robert chastised in a separate interview for a man whose native tongue is Spanish to be able to put together a phrase like cultural redacted just speaks to how bright he is. September 2022 is when Alejandro decided to initially address the infamous comment, speaking with IndieWire's Eric Kahn and stating, "It was like, oh, you guys from your banana country. If I were from Denmark or Sweden, I might be seen as philosophical, but when you're Mexican and you say things, you're pretentious." And at number 4, Bill Burr. Bill is a comedian known well for being a controversial kind of entertainer, often landing in hot water for things spoken about during his stand-up comedy appearances. His most controversial, arguably, comes from his Saturday Night Live stint. While opening up his monologue, the comedian quipped some rather interesting remarks, according to The Hollywood Reporter. He ranted about cancel culture at the start, expressing how it went so far as literally running out of people to cancel. They're going after dead people now. They're trying to cancel John Wayne. It's like God did that 40 years ago. Further in, Bill also called out white women who he felt, quote, hijacked the woke movement. Bill explained that it was supposed to be about people of color not getting opportunities they deserve, while also arguing how that changed in a blink of an eye. By the end of his spiel, Bill got into Pride Month, questioning why the month felt a little too long to celebrate the community. Quote, "For a group of people that were never enslaved, how did they get all of June?" His argument also pushed a detailed comparison of how black people have a mere 28 days of overcast weather during February. He closed off with the words, "How about you hook them up with July?" In response, which came quick and plentiful, one Twitter user explained, "How about you not pick hosts who say things like gays weren't enslaved, even if his joke is to point out black people suffered more." And at number 3, Tom Segura. In March 2023, an article was posted describing the fire Tom and his wife, Christina Pazitsky, underwent for claiming that the use of washcloths when showering is a poor person's lifestyle. Of course, the two were widely criticized amid the mini clip from the podcast going viral. Their washcloth comment kicked off a massive hygiene-related discourse regarding cleaning habits, with numerous people pointing out the podcaster's ignorance, blatant racist undertones, and dismissive attitude about the situation. On Twitter, various users bashed the couple for their public admissions of being unhygienic and unclean, especially given Tom's mentioning of not washing his feet or legs and not using a washcloth overall. And at number 2, Leah Remini. Scientology, a topic I knew would eventually come around full circle on this channel. Naturally, when we hear Leah's name, it's the first thing that comes up, because not only is it her most controversial career aspect, but speaking out about the topic also heavily affected her time in Hollywood. As for Leah, one's whole life is sacrificed to becoming a member of the practice known as Scientology. On top of this, some other facts, according to Leah, are that Scientologists are cruel to reporters, and their church refuses to accept psychiatry as a valid practice. Their leader, David Miscavige, has faced various accusations of being mentally and physically manipulative, and the practice has been blasted for their allegedly desperate devotion to keeping their celebrity members, again, according to Leah. Of course, some of Leah's other allegations have leaned more on the serious side that we just can't get into, but let's just say the response to all of it hasn't been well. And in at number 1, Alex Jones. Yes, the conspiracy theorist who pushed the theory of the violent Sandy Hook tragedy being staged. On top of this, Alex has had some other rather controversial public statements. While some are incredibly crude and out there, others fall on the side of arguably weird and odd, including the government and their supposed weather weapons. Yeah, I know, but stay with me here. Alex isn't just a believer of the secretive forces working to control people's minds. Oh no, he's also been a lifelong warner about the government's speculated efforts to completely control the weather for their alleged personal agendas. During a 2013 broadcast, Alex claimed there was weather weapon stuff going on, as per a Media Matters produced transcript. In a broadcast over that summer, Alex insisted there was weather-based modification going on.
Starting off our list today, in the number 10 spot, we have Pete Davidson. Saturday Night Live star Pete Davidson made his Tonight Show debut in 2018 to chat about his short-lived engagement to his then fiancée, Ariana Grande. The interview started off easy enough though, with the comedian gushing talking about the relationship. However, when Fallon suggested that the late night show itself would be a perfect place for the Hollywood duo to get married, Davidson clapped back by saying, "Why do people care? It's very weird. It's weird because like the president's trying to pardon himself," and he then went on to make a reference about Donald Trump's affair with Stormy Daniels. The audience responded to the remark with some scattered laughter, while Jimmy himself laughed it off but looked a little bit uncomfortable. Davidson then went on to throw a couple more profanities throughout the interview. Finally, Jimmy told Pete that he couldn't say those words on live television, and then he jokingly told the comedian he was fired from the show. Pete then went on to tell Jimmy that he didn't care and he would just go on the Seth Meyers show, before stating that he had Seth's number but not Jimmy's. Jimmy then quickly retorted by saying, "And you're never going to get it either." The entire exchange was then met with shocking howls from the studio crowd. Quickly, Pete and Fallon's awkwardness together made for such a comedic gold moment that NBC appeared to excuse the former verbal hiccups and gave him the green light to return to the show. Number 9. Lea Michele. When Jimmy Fallon welcomed former Glee star Lea Michele onto The Tonight Show back in January to discuss her Funny Girl Broadway debut, Michelle wouldn't be the only big name star on the show that evening, as The Whale and Stranger Things star Sadie Sink also joined Jimmy on the sofa for a chat. But when the primetime talk show invited the two to take part in a game of charades, some eagle-eyed fans claimed to spot a rather awkward moment after they pointed out that Lea pushed Sink out of her way. The moment then came after Fallon welcomed the two to come on from behind the scenes, and she awkwardly stood in front of Sadie before Sadie moved out of the way so Lea could slide into her spot. Lea also cut Sadie off when she was making her way to the sofa. The outcome of the episode would then have fans talking and smashing Lea on various social media platforms as they labeled her to be an actress that was a rude, mean girl. Number 8. Cardi B. Cardi B is just as well known for her over-the-top demeanor and trademark catchphrases as she is for her catchy beats and overall lyrical flow. So you think that before Jimmy brought her on the show, he would have done some research on what he should have expected when bringing the Bronx native onto his show in 2017. Equipped with all her signature sounds and quick-witted jokes, the Bodak rapper was indeed in full Cardi B mode. The problem? It looked like Jimmy didn't quite know how to handle her unique energy, which made for an awkward interview that left some fans cringing. At the start of the segment, the artist had already begun with her strange noises, which Jimmy seemingly attempted to ignore at first, after he asked Cardi B about her NYC upbringing, to which she responded by saying her signature sound, leaving Jimmy to simply just sit there in silence before taking a sip of water. As the interview went on, he appeared to fall more and more into this hilarious groove with the rapper, but the whole thing just came off as a pretty uncomfortable moment, as Twitter users even put it. So entertaining for Cardi, but really awkward for Jimmy. Number 7. Shawn Mendes. Singer and Canadian Shawn Mendes had not one but two pretty uncomfortable appearances on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, with the hitmaker who first went on the show in 2016 to help the host with his hashtag fall song segment. But just as Mendes was finishing the second song, he would call Fallon out for giving him a late cue for beginning his singing, before making a number of jokes in order to point out the comedian's age. While the audience went on to laugh at the first joke, it would quickly stop as Shawn went on to throw similar verbal blows Jimmy's way, like when he told the host that he sounded like his grandfather. The joke was then met with awkward cricket sounds from both the audience and Jimmy, and it totally gave off this like really cringy vibe. Somehow Shawn was able to return to the show 2 years later, and he would go on to open up about his performance with Justin Timberlake at the 2018 iHeart Music Festival. Jimmy then heckled his guests over who Justin might just like more as the banter continued on throughout the interview. Things progressively then got a little bit more awkward, as Jimmy's final move to squash the playful beef was to share his infamous over-the-top laugh. Number 6. Donald Trump. Jimmy Fallon's interview in 2016 with Donald Trump would leave countless Americans disappointed and enraged. With the Tonight Show host keeping things pretty lighthearted, he did his best to avoid pushing any political buttons. However, he did finish off his interview with the notorious piece of resistance after he playfully messed up Donald's wig, with the move bringing Donald on the show being widely criticized, eventually costing Fallon 21% of his audience by the following year, as fans were furious with the host, to point out he would later admit in the Hollywood Reporter Awards Chatter podcast that days following the incident, it was a downtime for him and he was very sorry as he didn't want to make anyone angry. Donald then came out to accuse the host of just whimpering before claiming that Jimmy just needs to be a man already. By 2019, The Tonight Show would then bounce back with top ratings, but it seemed like for Fallon's image, it still remained somewhat tainted.
Number 5. Michael Michael Jackson. The Leaving Neverland documentary highlighted two people's stories when it came to Michael Jackson making unwelcome advances on them. It left fans, supporters, and fellow celebrities on opposite sides of the fence. Back in 2019, Wendy would even weigh in on the issue when she offered up her opinions on the 4-hour documentary, denouncing all the claims that had been made on her talk show. When introducing the hot topic to her audience members, Wendy didn't bite her tongue. She went on to share her thoughts. With Michael being accused of engaging in intimate relationships with people much younger than him, the radio host went on to reveal that she believes these revived accusations were brought into play for an ulterior motive. She said, "I do believe that this is a money grab for families, but with the topic being such a sensitive issue, many fans called her out as it just shouldn't have been spoken on TV. And if you didn't see what she said, please go and look it up because it was honestly just too gross to hear." Number 4, Marcus Scribner. Back in 2018, Wendy decided to go straight for the birds and the bees conversation when she sat down with actor Marcus Scribner, who is known for his role on the hit show Blackish. With Marcus being a relatively private person, it was rumored that he was in a relationship in 2020, and he was not one to give away much about his personal life. Marcus appeared as if he didn't want to share any details about the mystery woman in his life, but many fans were curious to know all the details about everyone he is dating. Fortunately for fans, Marcus would briefly touch on the topic when he made an appearance on the Wendy Williams show. He told Wendy, "Currently, it's complicated. We've got stuff going on. I'll leave it at that." He then refused to add any details, even after Wendy asked him if he has ever had a bird and the bee intimacy level with anyone. Feeling uncomfortable by her question, Marcus would go on to say, "Wendy is trying to hit me with the difficult questions. I'll leave it a mystery for the audience. However, that's just a creepy question for any 50-year-old to ask an 18-year-old. Number 3, Drea Michelle. When Drea made an appearance on Wendy's show, she became a hot topic in the tabloids, as Drea really handled all of Wendy's digs like a champ. And I personally would put Wendy in her place if she ever asked me some of the questions that she asked Drea. In the interview, she would pretty much imply that Drea gets around when she went on to ask her, "How many basketball players have you been with?" Wendy then tried to embarrass her even further in an attempt to shame her for her intimate choices. She turned to the audience and said, "If you don't watch the show, that seems like Wendy you're crazy, but she's been this girl that's gotten around." Dre would then clear up the rumors by saying it's been over 3 years since she's dated any basketball players, and that she wasn't afraid of her past as anything you do in your past can be cleaned up. Number 2, Dionne Warwick. In December of 2020, Wendy would come under fire after she made fun of Dionne Warwick. The star, who had been tweeting about artist stage names, would say that she has never been involved in the Twitter sphere. Instead, she watches TV, sings songs, reads books, socializes, or moisturizes her hair. Before going on to say, "I think if you're a person of a particular age, you need to be on social media and you need to get down sometimes and talk to these kids. Not to talk to them, but you really do need someone young in your family just to make sure that you're coming off correct." She then responded to Wendy's statement on Twitter, saying, "A friend alerted me that Wendy Williams was spending a lot of not nice time speaking to me. I tuned into her show to catch the last few minutes of her speaking about me, and as in the past, she seems not to be able to speak without making malicious comments. My hope is that my name will refrain from being spoken or thought of by her, as this conversation was held a few years ago, letting her know that there would not be any need for her to say my name. I don't believe anyone has to be mean to get noticed." And coming in at number 1, Keke Palmer. The actress is well known for being outspoken, and that's why we love her. So when Wendy tried to discuss the incident that surrounds Keke and Trey Songz, it would prompt her to tell Williams directly that she disagreed with how the host presented the story. After stopping by on the talk show to promote her new book, Keke would bring up the incident with Williams while putting her on blast for how she chose to defend Songz. She went on to say, "I will say, Wendy, I would have loved to turn on your show and see you be a little more compassionate and a little less accusatory." After a bit more awkward conversation, Keke went on to remind her that it matters how hosts and other late night profile figures speak about certain issues, and said it wasn't right to tell girls it was okay for them to feel weird and awkward in situations, and that people need to start saying no when things don't feel right, because it's okay to say no.
Starting us off at number 10, we have the unnecessary segment. So back in 2013, Jimmy went under fire for allowing a segment between himself and a group of children to air. In this skit, he was interviewing them questions they had no idea about, considering they're about 5 or 6 years old. He told them that America was in debt to China and owes them about $1.3 trillion, to which he asked what they think America should do in order to pay them back. One kid suggested mass destruction and a full her, which is wild because the kid was very young. Why does he know so much about violent things? Jimmy responded with, okay, that's an interesting idea. He then pushed the joke further, asking the rest of the children if Chinese people should live, most of them saying yes, except for the one kid who brought up the idea in the first place. After ending the segment comparing it to the Lord of the Flies book, this was obviously not received well by the immediate public. Jimmy and the ABC network ended up issuing a public apology, condemning their part in the segment's execution, and had it removed from all platforms, never to be rewatched from the public. At number 9, we have the inappropriate comments. Back in 2009, an interview he had with Megan Fox resurfaced. In it, she was retelling the time she was an extra on Michael Bay's film Bad Boys 2. She was only 15 at the time and was dressed in a bikini and 6-inch heels, which she had no business wearing around anyone, especially at her young age. The conversation was clearly going in a way that reflects how society and Hollywood preys on young girls for their sick need. Megan was trying to out Michael's inappropriate tendencies, but Jimmy instead defends it, saying, that's really a microcosm of how all our minds work. But some of us have the decency to repress those thoughts and pretend that they don't exist. Yeah, maybe it was funny at the time when being mindful and not a weirdo was considered unfunny, but in today's age, this proved to be detrimental for Jimmy's career. Next up on the list, we have the Andy Dick and Ivanka Trump interview. It's always the interviews from the 2000s that tend to be the worst ones. In 2007, Jimmy had Andy and Ivanka on the show. As comedians, you're supposed to be funny, but what part of putting your hands on a woman on national live television is funny? Let's just throw being woke and progressive and all that stuff out the window for a second. That type of action is worthy of you getting thrown out or jailed. As Ivanka's answering one of Jimmy's questions, or trying to, she can tell Andy is staring at her the whole time, and he finds every opportunity he can to lay his hands on her. He asked if she puts glitter on her legs and proceeded to start rubbing her leg. Jimmy intervened while trying to maintain the lightness of the show, but he didn't stop. He ended up getting dragged out of the show by Jimmy alongside 2 other security staff. Now, regardless where you stand politically, he had no business touching someone without their consent. When asked about his non-consensual touching for an unrelated matter, he denied it and said it was just him being funny. But it was only last year when he was convicted for battery and sentenced to 90 days in jail as a newly registered offender. I guess it's not funny anymore, huh? At number 7, we have Quinta Brunson's acceptance speech. After winning an Emmy for the Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series award, Quinta's moment was basically ruined when Jimmy, who presented the award, decided to perform his long-time bit with Will Arnett. He proceeded to lie on the stage throughout the duration of her acceptance speech. She didn't let this ruin it entirely, as she tried to play along and made him hold her phone while she spoke. She handled it with grace, but people were still offended on her behalf, especially her co-star Cheryl Lee Ralph, who called the act disrespectful. Later, she appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he was able to apologize to her publicly. She was also able to give her acceptance speech in full, which was honestly the least he could do for her. Fortunately for him, all was forgiven. Next up at number 6 is the Kanye West interview. Kanye is known for his radical political statements and beliefs, and not in a good way. In 2018, he appeared on Jimmy's show and was asked about his stance with Donald Trump, as he was often seen as an avid Trump supporter. Him admitting to it face-to-face was a way to stir the pot, and having it recorded was a plus. But this caught the rapper off guard, and he kind of just tilted his head and went silent. It was too short of an awkward moment. You might miss it because Jimmy quickly cut to commercial. I personally think it would have been funnier had he just let Kanye sit in that awkward silence a bit more. After his segment was aired, Kanye went on Twitter to clarify what happened. He said he wasn't necessarily stumped by such a question, but rather he just wasn't given an opportunity to actually answer the question.
Number 5, Betrayals of the Heart. In an episode posted to Jada's controversial Red Table talk show Watch series, she would get real when she opened up about her marriage and how it wasn't easy and that there was a lot of betrayals when it came to her and her husband's Will's heart. While Jada used the episode to explain all the nagging rumors that were surrounding her marriage with Will and apparently how the couple aren't with each other, she also went on to allude the worst transgressions she has noticed in their marriage. When Jada finally dived into the infidelity part of their relationship, she would say, "I'm asked a lot about it. Is there infidelity in your relationship with Will? And it's like, no, but there have been other betrayals of the heart that have been far bigger than what I could think in regards to an infidelity situation. But what's more worse than cheating on your partner? Can someone just explain that to me? Number 4. Matthew McConaughey. During Matthew McConaughey's interview on the Red Table Talk Show, he would reveal that he and his mother, fellow guest Kay McConaughey, had fallen out over her interactions with the press, an estrangement that lasted from 1996 to 2004, when he said, "As soon as I got famous, I started to have my weekly Sunday call home to call my mom. Mother wasn't answering the phone. A fan of my fame was answering the phone." This then resulted in Matthew to have to take a step back in his life so he could figure out how he could balance his life and how fame was affecting it. As when he was sharing his personal details of his life with his mom, he would be finding them shortly show up in the 6 o'clock news 3 days later. So it resulted him not being able to talk to his mom as his mom for about 8 years. Number 3. The birds and the bees. It's not really surprising, considering Jada has been really open about her life in the bedroom, that a lot of her conversations and interviews on the Red Table Talk Show have become intimate stories that have worked their way from the bedroom into Red Table discussions. So much so, in fact, Jada has devoted an entire episode to talk about the birds and the bees. In the episode, Jada would learn Willow's first introduction and when it happened, when she walked in on both her mom and dad, and how Jada even joked about it on ET, saying, "Oh my god, I need to get this child some therapy." She was actually really embarrassed. But it couldn't get any worse as she revealed information on the intimate episode, and when she was acutely aware of her children's experiences and how she just wants to input it into their conversation. But the whole thing was just really weird, because what kind of parent invests themselves that hard into their child's business? Number 2. Jaden Smith. Celebrity parents clearly aren't immune to parenting heartbreaks, as Jada once even had to bring her son Jaden Smith on an episode of her show to speak about his emancipation thoughts. During the episode, Jada would say, "At 15 years old, Jaden and I remember this day specifically. It's probably one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life. You got to a point where you told me straight up, you were like, 'Mom, I have to leave here to live my life.'" Despite being devastated, Jada knew that she had to honor her son's feelings, adding, "Being in this lifestyle and in this world is a bubble and he wanted out. I understood that because I didn't have the bubble. I knew that having my freedom outside the bubble, what I gained from that. I knew the sooner I let him go, the faster he was going to come back. But if your child feels like they have to run away, then there's truly a problem." And coming in number 1 today, we have Girls Trippin'. After nearly 2 decades of not talking to each other, not even Jada Pinkett Smith knew why she and Gabrielle Union had been locked in a feud for so long. So on May 28, 2020, during an episode of the Red Table Talk Show, the host invited her old friend on the show so they could once and for all settle their beef and squabble like grown women in order to do so. When announcing their feud, Jada would then come out to say, "Gabrielle and I were never really girlfriends. We were greatly associated that at some point that dissolved. And for like 17 years, we have not really spoken. We don't even know why we were so mad and what we were mad about." Jada would then go on to note that the whole thing was just very petty. Gabrielle was just happy that the two could finally come to a place of healing, and with it, she would share her side of the story by saying, "I'm a hater, I'm a troll," before explaining if it wasn't for her life coach, she would have never seen how her choices were affecting her life so negatively, and it was also taking a toll on her personal relationships.
And at number 10, Miley Cyrus. Miley's pretty much been besties with controversy since her early teen days, transitioning from Disney's biggest star of her era to pop culture's most scandalous it girl. So when the singer sat down for the notoriously unfiltered podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, to take part in a 3-hour discussion with its host, the equally candid superstar dished everything one could think of. Eager fans were tuned in to witness Miley's brutally honest revelations, from roasting Joe himself to uncovering some unfiltered truths like her divorce process and how she's been branded cold-hearted by exes for treating them as if they don't exist. Miley did not hold back. In fact, the Hollywood icon did exactly what was expected of her. And we have her most highlighted moments that could be argued as controversial ready for your awaiting ears. As per Pop Crave, Miley informed Joe how she believed her singing voice elevated after she and Liam Hemsworth lost their old house to a fire. On top of the admission prior, the singer revealed how her split from Liam sucked and was far from what people assumed. Then Miley also got got into her fallout with the VMAs over a stage issue, dishing to Joe about how the directors for her performance made disrespectful comments towards her after she asked to be treated like any other male performer. Not an artist to ever shy away from seeing her creative desires being met thoroughly, Miley was unabashed when she admitted how the VMA directors came for her for their attempt to stage her performance with a beauty light. After requesting the light be removed due to hindrance, Miley stated they told her, "You want to be treated and lit like a guy, we wouldn't be dealing with this if a guy was doing it." Before we break down the rest of today's list, be sure to tap our notification bell for more celebrity content, as it really helps our channel. And at number 9, Elon Musk. Elon's former but still ongoing Twitter battle for dominance most recently seen him suing Microsoft over the company pulling Twitter's ads from their platform. But this big boss is no stranger to scandals, and this was only one of many. Between fraud and a series of other allegations, Elon's best skill outside of manufacturing electric vehicles and producing spaceships is making headlines. He's normally really good at rising from falling, but has been relatively quiet on his end, as not a lot of people still talk about or share news on him. He's had run-ins with East and Southeast Asian countries like China and Thailand and the government, accusations of fostering toxic, racist, and sexist working environments thrown at him, and engaged in feuds with the general public over why he feels the need to throw money at everything. And that's not even half of the things he's actually done. So while these problems may never truly get rid of Elon entirely, it also doesn't stop the massive hits to his career that comes with it. In at number 8, Kanye West. We know how much Ye was widely condemned for his less recent slew of anti-Jewish comments. However, much like the others on today's list, this rapper holds even more priors of making controversial remarks. Right after his public hate comments, Ye defended his actions by stating, "Black people are actually Jew also," adding, "You guys toyed with me and tried to blackball whoever opposes your agenda." He also accused recording producer Diddy of being controlled by, quote, "the Jewish people." Naturally, many people criticized his remarks and several brands severed their ties with him. Celebrities were also quick to speak out against the rapper for his then actions. But before this, Ye made several other comments deemed hateful, including suggesting that slavery was by choice and referring to the health shot during unprecedented times as the mark of the beast. There was also the White Lives Matter issue and his public vocal support for former US President Donald Trump outside of the aforementioned. And we didn't even talk about Taylor Swift. However, to save us all time and our eyes rolling white, we shall move right along. In at number 7, Kevin Hart. I'm sure we all know what controversy is coming because since it occurred, it's been deemed as one of his worst. And that's saying a lot given who exactly we're talking about. From a controversy that kicked off in 2018 and got dragged into 2020, Kevin once stepped away from his opportunity to host the 2019 Academy Awards after the announcement was met with intense backlash. He suggested removing himself from the show after a handful of his other homophobic tweets suddenly resurfaced. His history of being openly homophobic didn't help, especially when he announced in 2015 interviews that he was doing so for the sake of comedy. So when the world discovered he'd be hosting the 2019 Oscars, he and the Academy saw immediate hate. Within minutes, Twitter users were digging up his older tweets and jokes to repost them while stating his actions lacked apologies and should not be rewarded. Even more, on December 6, 2018, Kevin uploaded an Instagram video refusing to apologize. However, the next day, his official statement of stepping down from the event came, and he apologized to those he offended. Since the comedian attempted to discuss the issue in numerous statements, appearances, social media posts, and even through his Kevin Hart Don't F This Up Netflix docuseries. He broke down the Oscars controversy amid several other public issues he was going through at that time. In at number 6, Post Malone. Not much has been heard of Post recently, ever since the scandal that nearly took out his entire career. He's been on a rather calm, backseat type of vibe since. Still, back in November 2017, the singing rapper was labeled a culture vulture and faced several accusations of appropriation. Post ended up responding to the backlash of his then most recent problematic hip-hop comments, addressing the hate surrounding his Rolling Stone interview where he suggested to fans looking for life-inspiring lyrics not to listen to hip-hop music. The Sunflower artist further claimed he was a target of reverse racism within the genre. Following the article's publishing, Twitter users expressed their disapproval, entirely aware of the months of culture appropriation accusations Post was seeing ahead of the interview. Post eventually clapped back to the criticism by posting a Twitter video explaining his headspace, noting how the comments were seemingly taken out of context during a drinking interview. Quote, "A lot of people are saying I don't appreciate hip-hop or I'm taking advantage of hip-hop. What I was trying to say is that there are a lot of people saying the same ish, not saying anything super meaningful. Never once did I say that I don't appreciate hip-hop. I'm just trying to keep living and make the music I love." Number 5.
open marriage. Jada and Will Smith have faced a lot of scrutiny over their marriage to the point they have become a laughingstock or a hero to other people who have a non-conventional approach when it comes to their love life. In 2013, Jada would sit down for an interview with HuffPost Live, and she would admit more fuel to the fire behind the rumors surrounding her open marriage, when she would insist that she and Will had no claim over each other's lives. She would then go on to say, "I've always told Will, you can do whatever you want as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and be okay." She then insisted that she was here to be his partner, but at the end of the day, Will had to learn how to be his own man. After the interview started to go viral, it faced a lot of backlash, and Jada would head to her Facebook page to clear everything up by saying, "Will and I can do whatever we want because we trust each other to do so. This doesn't mean we have to be in an open relationship, this means we have grown. But if you aren't in an open relationship, how do you explain your affair with August Alsina? And how are you able to look at yourself in the mirror and be okay with the fact that you embarrass your husband every single day?" Number 4, interviewed herself. In the aftermath of the whole August Alsina interview, Jada Pinkett Smith would admit that there was some healing that needed to take place, and she would tweet that she would be interviewing herself as the next subject on her Red Table Talk episode, and Will Smith would be joining her. In the episode, we would see Will share his side of the story, and watching him find peace in the process while bringing up all of his core thoughts of pain was honestly just heartbreaking to see. Although Jada would confirm that she had an affair with August, she also went on to clarify that her and Will were temporarily separated when it happened, and then she went on to deny August's allegations of Will giving the singer his blessings. With the interview being watched more than 30 million times, it quickly went viral, and Jada's repeated use of the word entanglement rather than affair became an online target for jokes, as did a picture that showed Will in tears. Number 3, embarrassed Snoop Dogg. With Snoop Dogg being a good friend to Jada Pinkett Smith, I don't think any of us really believed that she could do something so cruel to embarrass her good friend during an interview on her Red Table Talk show. But she did. So we all saw Gayle King come for Kobe in 2020 after he passed away and claimed that the basketball legend was accused of making unwanted advancements towards an unnamed woman. Snoop, being clearly upset with the fact people were choosing to ruin Kobe's legacy in an attempt for fame, would then take to his Instagram to post a video where he would call Gayle out by insulting her appearance and telling her, "Back off, B, before we come get you." As a result of the outburst, Jada would then force the rapper to make an appearance on her Red Table Talk show so she could clear the air. But in the process, she showed no mercy and ended up embarrassing Snoop Dogg by saying, "When you first came out and said what you said, you know, in regards to Gayle, my heart dropped. I felt like not only were you talking to Gayle, but you were also talking to me. I was like, oh no, Snoop has now taken his power flow away from me, away from Willow, away from my mother." Snoop Dogg then ended up feeling so ashamed that he even issued Gayle an apology. But honestly, even though he was in the wrong, there was no need to embarrass him in front of the whole world when this just could have been a private conversation between two old friends. Number 2, racial bias. During a Red Table Talk interview, Jada would reveal what triggers her the most when it comes to white women, when she opened up about her relationship she has with white women and women of color, and then she revealed a surprising revelation of how she views women with blonde hair. When she went on to say, "I think what crushes me specifically in my relationship with white women, the thing that really breaks my heart, is that white women understand what it feels like to be oppressed." She then went on to admit her own racial biases when she said, "I have to admit I'm guilty to that to a certain degree because I do have my biases, specifically to blonde women. Blonde hair on white women just triggers me. I've had to catch myself." Jada then went on to explain she harbors such hateful thoughts when it comes to white women with blonde hair because all throughout her childhood, all she can remember is being teased by them in regards to her hair, how she looked, and how they made her feel belittled. But I think we can all agree that she was just sneak dissing Margot Robbie. And probably me next, who knows. And coming in number 1 today, we have the dealer interview. When Jada appeared on Sway in the Morning back in 2017, she would reveal a lot of interesting things when it came to her and Tupac. In the interview, when Sway asked her to talk about their relationship, she would say, "One of the things that's very interesting that I've never really said before is that when I first met Pac, when we first met, I was a dealer." Jada then went on to explain that she wasn't going to jump into the full details of their relationship because she was going to write a book on it. But then she would explain that she had to leave that life behind and Pac behind because something really bad happened, so she had to leave. And as she was leaving, Pac was going into it, and there was a point in which she had to go her separate ways from Pac, and she went on to say, and I just felt like, okay, God, one day you're going to do for Pac what you did for me, which is you saved me. It's clear that their relationship was complicated, and we can't really grasp what she was trying to explain about their relationship, but it's clear that their relationship was based on survival more than it was romance.
Number 10, Beyonce. Wendy Williams once sent her fans on a frenzy after she decided to mock the way Beyonce spoke in her HBO documentary Life is But a Dream. Taking to the Wendy Williams show, what started off to be a sweet moment when Williams gushed over the star's music. It quickly turned sour after things got a little awkward when the audience started to turn on her after she said Beyonce couldn't talk. During the episode, Wendy would say, "I am a Beyonce fan. I'm going to be watching this documentary even if she doesn't introduce us to new stuff. I'm watching because fortunately, one of the TVs in our kitchen has closed captions, so I'll be able to understand what she says. You know, Beyonce can't talk. Beyonce sounds like she has a 5th grade education. She can't talk." When the audience started to turn against Wendy, she would then continue on with her rant by saying, "Excuse me, I just said I was a fan, but we have to call a spade a spade. I mean, honestly, and we really have to do the closed captioning just for times like that." Number 9, Ariana Grande. In 2015, Wendy would land herself in hot water with a number of Ariana Grande's fans after she made a few controversial comments about her. The talk show host found herself on the rampant end of criticism after she seemingly body shamed the singer on the Wendy Williams show. The audience initially laughed after the television personality star said, "She's 21, she'll forever look 12. Things would soon take a sharp turn when she said, "And I don't mean that in a good way. It's nice to look younger than you are, but when you look too young and then you're short, well, she's only 4'11". I don't look at her as like a woman." Her comments would soon prompt the hashtag cancel Wendy Williams to trend on Twitter, and fans of Ariana band together to try and get her show taken off the air. And even Miley Cyrus would take to the comments and say, "Standing up for Ariana Grande by using the hashtag cancel Wendy Williams show is not petty. It is showing people like Wendy Williams that it is not okay for people to be belittled in any way. We all know that Ariana will never say something back to Wendy for fear of it becoming another tabloid headline. So we are here to stand up for the one we love and we will never back down." Hey guys, are you liking this video so far? If so, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Number 8, TMZ. One thing about Wendy is that she never tippy toes around anything. So when she sat down with TMZ to talk about her ongoing medical struggles and starting a new career, she sparked some major concern among her fans. When the star joined TMZ for a live interview, she would tell the outlet why she was turning her back on TV and instead choosing to produce her own podcast. And for her, it really came down to time and money. Things then took a bizarre turn when she made a bizarre revelation. She shared what her battle with lymphedema was like, having no issue holding up her foot to reveal just how swollen it was from the condition. She would go on to tell viewers that she can only feel about 5% of her feet, but she also explained how she wasn't going to let it slow her down. But from her slurred speech to her shifty eyes, Wendy appeared as though she was trying almost too hard to concentrate on what she was trying to say. At one point, she was just unknowingly repeating and even explaining the word podcast. It was pretty concerning. Number 7, CNN. In an interview back in 2022, Wendy would admit that she was reluctant to remotely film the Wendy Williams show after watching other TV hosts work from their home. In an interview with CNN, Wendy would say that her competitors at home look disgusting, before she explained to the news outlet that she eventually gave in and decided to film at her apartment after having a few conversations with her production team. At first, not having a live studio audience felt weird, but then she remembered her years working as a radio personality. She said, "I've so enjoyed that, but it is much easier for me as a host to be here at home with no audience, because it's always been about description. You know, I've been a radio host longer than I've been a TV host. So yes, right, thank God for the radio." But the fact that she said other TV hosts look disgusting when compared to her working at home was just a little too far. Number 6, Alyssa Milano. Alyssa Milano once had a disagreement over how women choose to feed their young ones in public. After the outspoken breastfeeding advocate had a dispute with the TV host on Wendy's show, Wendy confessed to her that she did not share her views on breastfeeding in public. She said, "I don't need to see that." She then went on to say that she would personally take her kid to the car before allowing people to see her feed them in public. She said, "I just don't want to." Alyssa then suggested that society thinks too much of this when it comes to things like this, as it only happens during a particular amount of time. Alyssa then drew big applause from the audience after she went on to close the discussion and said, "You're lucky the baby is not here. I'd whip them out and feed him right on your show." She went on to note that breastfeeding is an amazing process and that women are the most perfect machines ever made.
In at number 5, Ricky Gervais. Comedian Ricky Gervais has never been one to conceal his true thoughts about someone, and this has become made expressly clear when he hosted the Golden Globes. In his opening monologue, he tore into nearly every massive celebrity in attendance. Even after all of the backlash that he received, he was still welcomed as a guest on The Tonight Show. Although as soon as Ricky sat down, he began to argue with Jimmy over comments regarding his appearance. Ricky Gervais then goes into a 4.5-minute rant about everything wrong with what Jimmy just said. It just gets so heated that Jimmy even turns to his production team for help after Ricky swears live on air. In at number 4, Samantha Bee. Samantha Bee is a comedian and political commentator that used her show called Full Frontal with Samantha Bee to further discuss her opinions and views on the world. So when Jimmy had on President Donald Trump, it came to no surprise that Samantha Bee was going to have some strongly worded opinions. When Jimmy had Trump on his show, he created one of the most memorable and perhaps controversial moments in late night history. With the president sitting beside the desk, he leaned over and ruffled his hair. This was highly criticized by many other late night hosts as being too jovial. Samantha's issue with this interview conducted by Fallon was that it should have never even happened. In at number 3, Horatio Sanz. It's no question that being a celebrity or being in the Hollywood spotlight definitely comes with a lot of pressure. Many people eventually succumb to some type of addiction issue as a way to cope with this. Horatio, who worked with Fallon back in the day on Saturday Night Live, slipped up during an interview with Vulture magazine. Because the pair had worked together for many years, they grew to become pretty close friends. Although Horatio admitted that every person who worked on SNL had some kind of illegal substance addiction or drinking problem. He continued by saying that comedians on the show would often find themselves needing to blow off steam, and it wasn't long before people started connecting the dots between that statement and Jimmy Fallon. It had been long rumored that Jimmy may have had a drinking problem as well, but the network, both for SNL and The Tonight Show, did their very best to perfect his image. This also makes a previous story about Fallon getting into a bar fight make a lot more sense. Horatio continued to talk about past alleged fights, including one where Jimmy supposedly poured a drink into someone's hat. Horatio claims that when the guy tried to confront Jimmy Fallon, he reportedly ended up on the floor. In at number 2, Roger Waters. For those of you who don't know, Roger Waters along with musician Syd Barrett are the founding members of the legendary rock band called Pink Floyd. The pair played together for many years before Syd eventually left the band. Although his diagnosis was never made official, many speculated that Syd Barrett could have been suffering from schizophrenia. In addition to his mental illness going unchecked, he was also experimenting heavily with psychedelics, which certainly impacted the music that Pink Floyd had created. However, Syd's brain chemistry did not bode well with mixing these drugs with his already distraught state of mind. When discussing this on The Tonight Show, you can visibly see Roger begin to get uncomfortable. You can tell that even this long after Syd's passing, it never gets easier for him to talk about. Now, the part where he inadvertently warns us about Jimmy Fallon is how Jimmy responds to this emotion. Instead of matching his energy and being more gentle with the conversation, Jimmy catapults himself out of the uncomfortable zone and immediately begins to try and crack jokes, which lands us at this awkward departure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to see you, and I'll be at every show screaming. I'll be waving at you, and you'll be ignoring me. But anyways.
Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, John Oliver. Many late night hosts have learned over the years that they are not really competition, but rather colleagues working in a similar field. This, however, does not mean that they are beyond criticizing the others' interviewing techniques. John Oliver, for example, hosts his own show called Last Week Tonight that has grown to become a big success in its own right. Even though John has his own show, he did appear as a guest on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. However, things got off to a very awkward start. After Jimmy remarked at his love for the name of John's show, John Oliver thought that his comment was weak. Pun intended, maybe. But the worst part was that it did not get better from here. Oliver outright said that this strange, out of nowhere compliment comes as a result of Jimmy Fallon's awful interviewing skills.